Well, hello and welcome to the Zwift PowerUps cycling podcast. It's a slight change in name, but it's still Matt Rowe here with Greg and Kev. How you doing, gents?
G'day, guys. Yeah, pleasure to be back, and let's get into it.
Great to be back, and let's do it again for 2019.
Absolutely. New year, new branding. So, as I say, we have a slight change in the structure to the podcast as well as the name, but we're still focused on discussing the same stuff. So it's training and tips to help make you a better cyclist on Zwift and out on the road. And with the new look of the podcast, the PowerUps Cycling Podcast, we're purely going to focus on road cycling, as Zwift actually they're rolling out 2 other PowerUp podcasts, one for triathlon and one for running. So PowerUp, if you simply Google it, is defined as a bonus which a player can collect and which gives their character an advantage, such as more strength or firepower. So in Zwift, obviously, it's the little icons you collect, the power-ups you get. But in our language, it's kind of just making you better. So this podcast is trying to power you up and give you that kind of constant aero helmet whenever you get on the bike. So guys, it's first podcast since Christmas, first podcast of 2019. How have we both been? What have you been up to?
Well, I wouldn't say my Christmas New Year has been that exciting, to be fair. I wound up in hospital for 8 days with a torn muscle in my leg that got infected. So, yeah, when I was supposed to go over and watch the Tour Down Under, I ended up spending 8 days in hospital in Adelaide. So I actually never got outside to see one single bike race. So I didn't have that much fun, mate, to be honest. But I'm on the mend, and I'm back home in New Zealand now and ready to kick on.
Good man. Looking forward. It's all behind you, mate. The rest of 2019 can only get better now.
Exactly.
Yeah, look, we had a training camp in late December prior to Christmas in Mallorca with the team, with Katusha, and that led into the racing period in Australia. So everyone knows the world of cycling comes to Australia in summer to start the season, and we had our nationals to begin with, then we had Tour Down Under, and then straight into Cadell's road race. And you might have seen the temperatures in Australia were extreme, like they are at this time of the year, and we were having temperatures of 44 degrees on some days, and certainly challenged everybody.
Good man. And just talking about the nationals there, I see Rowan Dennis didn't win. What's your thoughts there? I mean, I kind of felt for the guy. I mean, the amount of pressure I saw on social media, and obviously being January, timing of his form comes into it. But I think so much pressure heaped on him. Oh, he's going to crush the Australian nationals, and he didn't. What's your thoughts there, Kev?
Well, the person that beat him was Luke Durbridge, who is a fantastic time trialist himself. But you're right, when you're the world champion, you're expected to win. And if you don't, it's obviously seen as quite a heavy loss. So, yeah, it's obviously early season for Rowan, and he didn't win the first time trial, but I'm sure he's going to bounce back and he'll be good later in the season when he needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. And I guess just to briefly touch on nationals, your side of the pond, Greg. There's a young guy that the men's was it won by an under 23 rider?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the guy James Foucher. I mean, what a weapon. He rides for the Wiggins team, and when you see him ride, it just reminds you of watching Brad Wiggins on the bike. He was just so smooth. He's got, those long legs. He gets in that nice aero position. I mean, he rode away solo and just put minutes into the chasing group. It was one of the most impressive rides I've seen. And then, of course, he raced the under 23 time trial also, and he cleaned that up by 2 or 3 minutes also. So this guy's, he's a name for the future, no question.
Yeah, fair play to him. And talking of Team Wiggins, I was with a couple of Team Wiggins riders last Wednesday for the first KISS Super League round 1. It's actually in the Pinarello store on Regent Street in London, and there's 4 of the young Wiggins guys in store competing, which was pretty cool to see. So yeah, the kind of the topic for this podcast is going to be KISS Super League, hugely topical. I think round 1 was last Wednesday, and round 2 being this Wednesday, the day this podcast is released. So if you're listening to it on the day that this podcast comes out, tune in later for round 2. But I caught up with good friends of mine, John Mould and Tom Moses, about their experience in round 1. So they both ride for Madsen Genesis. So they won the overall team. both modest guys. You'll hear when they introduce themselves, they're kind of quite understated in what they've achieved. But they both won UCI road races. Both hugely credible top blokes. And John Mould won a medal in the Commonwealth Games last year. So yeah, let's get into it. Here's my chat with John Mould and Tom Moses. Here we go. Got John Mould and Tom Moses here for a chat about the first ever virtual pro bike race, the KISS Super League, round 1 on Zwift. Thanks for joining, boys. So yeah, first kick off. Who are you? Do you want to introduce yourselves?
I'm Tom. This is John. Go on, John. You go first.
Both ride for Madison Genesis this year. Bit of bike racing on Zwift. Long time Zwifters now. Moses is catching up with us and joining the cool crowd.
Yeah, I've been a Zwifter for about a year now, I think.
And what level are you?
17, nearly 18 though.
Not bad. Doug?
I'm 19, yeah.
Got the Tron bike, either of you?
I'm a way off that. I think I need another 25,000 vertical metres to get that.
Yeah.
Are you far off?
Yeah, I think I'm off it. I just do all the flat races because can't climb.
Yeah, they're like real life. He only rides around on the flat in real life anyway.
And your best kind of moment or best achievement on a bike? What would you say is your number one achievement?
There's a few and far between, really. I don't know. I had a few results in the UK, decent Premier Calendar wins, and represented England at the Commonwealth Games. That was a pretty big high.
Absolutely. And you both had a UCI win, haven't you?
Yeah, I had one finally this year. Moses had a few on his way. What you won Tour of Normandy before?
Yeah,
so
Rutland
stage.
and a few little ones.
Good stuff. And on your Zwift setups, what are you using?
An Elite Diretto Turbo. And then just usually use the laptop.
Cool. Yeah, same. Both the same, and then an iPad. Just a little bit different. Same turbo and banging on an iPad, which is always easier.
Happy days. And so looking at Wednesday, last Wednesday, which was the round 1 of the racing, how did you prepare? So before the event, what happened in kind of the day or two running up to? What was your thought and training process?
I tapered into it really. We had a day with the team the day before, so we had a day off the bike on the Tuesday, and then Wednesday I was thinking I might go out on the road in the morning, but it was raining a bit, so I thought, no, I'll just freshen up completely, just a complete day off and make sure I'm fresh for the evening.
Good man.
I was pretty much the same, yeah. I think you do a lot of racing on it before, but for training, and it was kind of with all the build up and everything. I think we all took it a little bit more serious than we have any other race before. So Bibby would have definitely tapered into it as well.
He's probably been taping for a few months.
He tapered for 2 months for it, so he was definitely fresh for the big day. But other than that, it's like did a decent warm up before we got on and stuff, and
even down to adjusting out your meal times. You couldn't eat at 6 o'clock like you normally would do, and then race at 7. I have to think about that. Eat about 3 hours before at 4 o'clock, just so you're not throwing up while you're flat out at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, good point. And what I'm taking from this, boys, is you took it seriously. Obviously, very, very hard event, tough competition, and it's real racing. You're taking this as it's not just jumping on playing a game. This is serious, right?
Yeah, I mean it's something we're used to. It's like all the crit races in the UK. It's basically treated like one of them. It's a similar effort, 1 hour flat out. Yeah, so you got to treat it like a real race. Any
gels or anything before?
Yeah, I had one. I got a good gel down me before it started.
Yeah, I was half thinking, I kind of want to sleep tonight, so I was close, but then I thought, I'll just do it without any caffeine gels.
I was fully committed. I wanted to sleep, and I didn't get to sleep until 2 a.m. Totally worth it. So.
It was worth it. Obviously, you won the team award. Obviously, Bibby won. Connor was well up there as well. Were you 5th, 6th, 7th?
5th, 6th, 7th, I think. Yeah. So.
5th, 6th, 7th. And how did you kind of communicate, or were you communicating during the race?
Yeah, well, we got a WhatsApp group, and we were kind of chatting about it, and then sending voice notes to each other because it's quite hard to type, and you got a big sweat on as well. I had a bit of an issue every time because your hand's soaking wet. I pressed record about 4 times and deleted it because it's all everywhere. But that was the only way we were chatting, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we were all on like a voice call or something, it would have been a bit hectic. All the noise of the turbos in the background and stuff. I would just quick voice notes was the best way.
Yeah, we were thinking of doing like a voice call, but then I wanted some music on as well. You can't Zwift without tunes
Yeah,
going.
I had my music on as well.
So,
So, rather listen to that than you panting away.
Yeah. Imagine hearing Bibby breathing. It wouldn't really give you that much motivation.
Yeah, it'd be horrible.
And am I right in thinking Colin's probably a little less used to racing on Zwift than you guys?
A few races less. We have raced with him though. Before Christmas, we did a few races together. Yeah. But we've probably done a few more, and then you and Bibby have done more than me even. So, yeah. Good
stuff. And do you think there's anything you're going to do differently communication-wise next time, or just stick with WhatsApp?
I think it seemed all right. I think
there wasn't too much team tactics where it was like you've got to do this, you've got to follow that, because it wasn't. It was more of a you almost didn't have to speak to each other because you know what you need to do. You just need to hang in there. We all knew where we needed to go hard. If there was one of us who hadn't ridden that course before or didn't know where the hard points were, then we would have needed to communicate a lot more. But we were all pretty experienced to know where you need to go hard and where you can go easy and when it kicks off.
Yeah. And talking about going hard, I mean, obviously Zwift is notoriously famous for its fast starts, and that seemed to be the case on Wednesday as well.
Yeah, straight from the gun. I think it's just the usual way everyone races, straight off the start line into it.
Yeah, Mouldy was dead panicky. He was like, it was about half an hour to go, and he was like, "You need to join the race. You need to join the race. You need to be on the front row." I was like, "Mouldy, like, cool, Ed, chill out. It's got half an hour to go. No one will be on the start line." Yeah, I was going to join 5 minutes to go. Sound. But Mouldy made us all join at least 20 minutes to go so that we were front row. So.
Yeah. I made sure, I think the field was all right. It's only 60 of you. But, if you do a Tour of Zwift or Tour of London or anything, when there's 400 guys, 400 people on the start line, if you're at the back, if you line up last, you're not getting to the front. So, I didn't want to risk it. So I was just moaning at the boys.
Panicking a bit, really, I think. Yeah. Getting nervous.
I was, as soon as it flashed up on the iPad, knowing you could join event, I was clicking there, I was there. Yeah, I was first there on my turbo one.
Yeah. And I guess for the amateur KISS League that's starting, I think it's today, Wednesday the 31st, I think it is. There's going to be a much bigger field. I think they're anticipating 400 riders. So what these guys are saying, joining the event early, being at the front of the grid is even more important there. Something to think about. But having watched the race back, obviously watching it live there, I was in London on Regent Street in the Pellemello store watching. Great atmosphere. But also watching it back, I mean, you guys were pushing 6-7 watts per kilo were flashing up for some riders in that first few minutes. And why do you think that is? Because a criterium, you wouldn't quite be pushing those numbers, would you? But on Zwift, it seems to be just the way Zwift racing is. Why is that?
You can't really compare it. It's once it gets going, the big the blob of riders. You've got to push that to get on to keep on the back, and then people push you just over trying to keep on the back, and that pushes them to the front, and that pushes the pace up. And the first lap was quicker than most Zwift races. Actually, it was like the first 20 minutes was so hard. It was like, God, they can't keep this up. We can't keep doing this. So after the first lap, it did ease off. I think that's after a lot of riders had been dropped, it eased up quite a bit. But that's because you just can't physically keep going that hard.
So I guess it's kind of that fear factor of just kind of losing the wheel. You've got to produce those big watts to be in that front bubble. As you all know, you kind of lose the wheel, especially with double draft.
Yeah, with double draft, you've got to be, if you lose 2-3 meters, you've got to be pushing on so hard just to get back on. And if you're out of the back, you're not getting back on. And I think that's what caught a lot of guys out who are not experienced with Zwift. They lost a little bit too much and just couldn't get back there.
Yeah. I think that just the thing is, it's bike riding, but it's a different, completely different than road racing or track racing. You can try and compare it to everything, but it does help if you do it more often. You know the little things, little tricks. You just get experienced in it. Really, it's hard to compare it. You can't. I think there's everyone trying to compare it being the same as a road race or comparing it to a crit, where it's a different category itself. It's a Zwift race.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. This is not like anything else. It is virtual Zwift racing. It is different. The most aggressive rider, I think, Connor Dunn. He saw him early on pushing like 700-800 watts trying to get away, but he's really struggling even at those big watts. I mean, what were you guys thinking when he's putting those big numbers down? What were you guys thinking?
Well, before the start, you could have named him as most aggressive rider. Anyway, you knew he was going to do that. It was his only option. He had to get away before the climb. But that would be his real life sort of tactic, get away before the climb, get up the road. But with the Zwift and especially double draft, he would have been better off sitting in, I think. And every time he went to go, he was putting out massive numbers. But just the speed of the group behind was just sucking him back in every time.
Yeah, and so we started off with 60 riders. Connor was hitting it hard early on. I think after 5k, we started losing our first riders, and there's a group of about 15, 20 riders who got dropped. And that was just you go under the water and through the tunnel, up that little kicker. It's only short, then into the dust. Riders were getting dropped already by then. Were you aware of that point? Was that a key part of the race?
Yeah. People like me and Mould who know Zwift racing, we knew that was the place where you need to go hard, because that's where it's going. The first sort of little effort you're going to need to make. But people who hadn't ridden Zwift or much or have raced before, they've just got into that point. 5 minutes in, it's like, right, we've just done a ridiculously hard start. We're starting to settle down now, and then that hit them by surprise. Whereas, the experienced Zwifters were at the front going pretty hard because they knew that's a really hard point in Zwift racing.
Yeah, I think that's a common theme. If you watch the race, you can see a couple of teams. You guys, Madsen Genesis, the All Stars, Team Didata under 23 squad, and the Academy Dream Team. They were you were always near the front. So that kind of tells me perhaps some of the riders who struggled. It's not necessarily a physical thing, but more of a tactical thing. So I anticipate those guys going back to the drawing board, reassessing, evaluating what they've done, and coming back stronger. So I think the competition may, nudge up a level over the next couple of rounds.
Yeah, I think so. It's practice makes perfect. So hopefully none of them really go on Zwift, and then where you keep going. But if they do keep riding, it's learning the courses as well for each one. You're going to go to a new place. If you've been on it enough, you know where it goes hard. So just a bit of advantage thus far, and you can definitely tell like the All Stars and us, and like you say in Dimension Data and the Academy team, you knew the course, and it just helps with everything. So hopefully they. I think it will be harder by the 10 weeks. In the last one, it'll be a big competition, but we'll keep going as it is, hopefully.
I think if everyone starts to ride like the Zwift Academy riders, the All Stars and us, I think there'd be more people going further into the race. But at the same time, it might be a bit easier if it's like that, because there's only the certain parts where they go hard. You had people like Connor Dunn going really hard at points where everyone else is wanting to rest, and he's pushing the pace on and making it hard for everyone else. So I think that's stuff like that attributed to how hard it was for the first half of the race.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Eric Min kind of predicted two things at the launch. One was Bibby to win, but two, that it's going to be those riders who have Zwifted before are going to be at the sharp end. We're not going to see a surprise winner, and that's obviously what happened. In terms of training for these Zwift races, obviously you've got your pro calendar of racing anyway. How does training for these Zwift races alongside the normal road season, how's all that going to work?
I think it works quite well. You see track riders, they're going flat out in the winter and then doing seasons in the summer. I don't think it's taken that much far off it, especially with people nowadays. That it's changed from November, December would be all the pros doing really long hours and no efforts at all. It's everyone's dropping zone 3, zone 4 in, and intensity stuff throughout the winter really. So it's the whole game's changed really in cycling. It's not just a long, slow winter of people not doing the effort. So it works well if you do a long ride on the road and then get some efforts done on the turbo. And so training wise, it's perfect really. And for training, you don't have to ride flat out every time you go on Zwift or on the turbo. You get the advantage of doing both. So definitely it fits in with us. We're off to a training camp next week, so we're gonna have to be mid
top end after not being on Zwift.
Mid training camp, do the next week's Zwift race out in Calpe, but hopefully it doesn't.
I think the racing on Zwift aids your training as well, because a couple of winters ago I'd be going out and doing an hour's worth of zone 3 anyway with a spike every 5 minutes. So that's pretty similar to a Zwift race, apart from you can go out, if it's horrible and wet, you could go out and do a couple of hours just riding on the road and come back in and get your bike on the turbo and do that hour of spike zone 3 without having to worry about doing it out in the cold, wet and rain. So
yeah, I think going back maybe 10 years or so in the UK, you can almost see a pattern where, come the start of the season, those riders who are near track riders and live near a track, so in the UK it was kind of like South Wales and Manchester, they'd hit the season with better form because they've been on the track and they've got all that speed and they're kind of hitting the ground running. And and those riders who weren't near a track were often at a disadvantage. But now with Zwift, everyone's, I guess, has got that opportunity to train, really well, load of top end through the winter, whilst being easy on the head. So I think, all around the country in the UK and probably globally, the standard of cycling because of Zwift and standard of racing has just gone up.
It just aids the way that you need to train. No one needs to do 25, 30-hour weeks every week in, week out through the winter now. No one does that anymore. And it's more about, intensity, zone-free efforts, that sort of thing. And, just doing 10 to 15 hours and making it really good quality. And that's where Zwift comes in because, you get it raining outside, snowing, you can just do it inside. It's, you've had a really good quality effort. You can do an hour and a half on Zwift and it's way more productive than doing a 4-hour ride.
And it's just more fun. I always like racing, so go on Zwift and have a race. It makes me train a lot harder. Yeah. I can't really push myself for no reason other than just trying to beat someone else.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if it's raining and we're both, text you in the morning, I want to do this Zwift race, we'll both go on there. You're never going to go any harder than trying to beat your mate, are you?
I think that was the weirdest thing about on Wednesday night, the KISS Super League. Actually, the first time I haven't tried to roll Bibby as hard as I could.
Yeah.
Because normally if I race Bibby, it's everything about make sure I beat Bibbs or Moses.
Yeah.
So, it was quite nice not having to make sure I beat them. Yeah. I wasn't. It's the first time
you weren't too bad when I rolled you at the end then.
No, yeah. No, we're a team, mate. It's fine.
Was there any, because obviously Moses, you went quite early in the sprint. Was that an attack, I presume, or was that a lead out?
Yeah, just kind of, no one was doing anything. Everyone was waiting for the exact same point to go, I think. And I thought, the only way I can do this now is if I get the jump on them and get that big gap straight away. They're not going to be able to rush at me because I'll have a big gap. So I just thought, if I go at the same time as everyone else, 200 metres to go, I might just, might be a bit of a drag race, might get 5th, 6th anyway, so I may as well try and win it rather than, just wait till the end. Give it a go, make it a bit exciting.
I just waited because I saw Moses made that early move. I didn't want to chase him down, so I just waited until the end. Good team player there.
You needed another 10 metres, didn't you?
Yeah. I needed an aero boost, so I didn't get one. So.
Talking of boosts, PowerUps. Yeah, talk to me about PowerUps. What's the ideal PowerUp, do you think?
What's it called, that one?
The aero PowerUp is the best one.
Yeah, not the van one.
No,
the aero one, I think. Yeah.
Drafting one. The aero lid, yeah. I think the drafting one is all right. It's not. No, the aero one's by far the best for a fast finish. Even on a climb like that, we were going quite fast. So.
Yeah. Especially that little dip into it, that's where you need to hit it there. That's why I hit it early, and I went on the flat a bit rather than on the steep part of the climb.
And there seemed to be a lot of aero helmets being used towards the end. So you all had their aero helmet.
Yeah, well, when we hit the bottom of the climb, you could tell the inexperienced Zwifters right at the start at 4K to go on the climb. They hit their feather thinking this is when you use it. But it was I was looking at that thinking, oh, great.
This is great, yeah. Every time they flashed up, you're thinking,
perfect for us. This is what we need. They're not going to have anything at the end. And we'd been saving ours all race. I'd gone on Zwift an hour before and ridden round for 40 minutes until I'd got the aero helmet boost. So I knew that was the one I needed for that finish. So I thought, I'm going to get that and use it right in the last few hundred metres. I'm not going to use any throughout the race. I'm just going to save that one, and unless I was getting into trouble, but luckily I was all right.
That's interesting, because obviously you gave up the opportunity of using multiple power-ups throughout the race, because every lap you get a new power-up, but you weighed up it's more important to be safe and make sure you got the aero.
I think if you need to use it, you got those chances of getting it again. Yeah. But you don't always get a power-up, you don't get the right one. So, personal choice. I think it's better just to pick the one you want, make sure you got it, and then hold on to it. Other than, unless you want to take a gamble, then you never know.
You usually like a gamble, don't you, Mouldy? So
I should have got rid of it. I had a feather. I should have just gambled
with it
early
with
on.
that, yeah. You should have had it a couple. You didn't.
Hopefully I'll get a chance to beat Bibbs next week.
Can you imagine going through the last lap and you get kind of the experience points, the little plus sign?
Oh, I may as well.
Oh.
I'd run clipped and got off in anger.
Thanks for my extra XP.
So the next round, who's again have Madsen Genesis put the A team in for this?
We don't know actually yet. We're all going on the training camp the day before, so we're going to be doing it from Calpe. There's 8 of us who have put ourselves forward to race these the Super League, and we've not decided which 4 are going to ride this one. We need to look at who we've got down and who's going to be the best in the sprint.
Interesting. Do you know the course?
Yeah, it's that Innsbruck ring.
Ooh, okay.
So
Doesn't go up the climb.
doesn't go up the climb, no. But it's that little kicker at the end. But it's pretty flat, yeah.
Doesn't suit a very punchy, fast rider.
But yeah, it's still chances with the last little kicker with, what is it, like 2.5k to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite open, but I think more than likely it'll be a group sprint of some sort.
So do you think there'll be a bigger group coming into the finish?
You say that, but we did the volcano flat for 3 laps, and there was 15, 20 guys left when we hit the final climb. So it was like, even though it's a flat race, it doesn't mean you can just sit in like a sprinter and ride 150 watts everywhere. You've still got to ride pretty much an hour of threshold.
Obviously, with all those spikes and effort and kind of capacity efforts, I mean, looking at some of the numbers that were pushed going up the volcano, they are like all-out 30-second minute capacity efforts. And if you haven't got the gas to do it, you're at the back, you lose 5 meters, you're at that double draft, and good night, Irene. Yeah. It's kind of the style of these races. It's a war of attrition, much more like the pro racing on the road, where it's not necessarily groups going off the front. It's just guys going out the back, rather than a break going off the front and not seeing them again all day. It's kind of the pace is so high, it's just riders getting dumped out the back.
Yeah, it's if you've got the legs, basically.
Yeah.
If as long as you've got the legs, and if you haven't, it soon comes and bites you, and it's all over.
Yeah, you'd have to be pushing ridiculous watts to get off the front and stay away. I think you can do a few late surprise attacks, 1 or 2k to go, and hope that no one reacts, thinking you're not going to stay away. I think that's the only way you can get away and win in Zwift. I think maybe the next round, you could attack with 2k to go up that last climb and get away with it, but the last one with a 4k climb, there was no one going to be hitting it, and because everyone was riding at pretty much their limits anyway.
The other one, if you get enough, you need a bigger group to go away, so you can get all double draft together, but it needs to be big enough to hold off the group behind. So it's only then if you have a smaller group. But I think most of the time all the experienced guys will always be there, knowing that can happen. So yeah, like we're saying, it's people go out the back instead of a breakaway and anything changes. Yeah,
I think you guys are all pretty confident in a sprint. I mean, versus other teams who are going to have to try and get away. So you guys kind of let. Yeah, what do you think your tactical be for the next round?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's that tough finisher. It kind of suits us. I think like every one of us, the 8 guys that are going to race, it's makes it harder. The harder it is before the sprint, it's better for us. We're not a proper team full of top class, world class sprinters. So as long as it's hard, it takes the edge off everyone. Then takes the top end off, and then we've all got a good chance. But yeah, it's one of them. You never know what's going to happen, and it could split early on. You could miss it, and
I think
it's just good fun.
You don't need to worry about trying to get away. You just need to make sure you're in that front group coming into the final. That's what you need to meet. You can't be hitting them with 10k to go because you're risking everything for going out the back. So I think it's all about being in that front group, and it's not like a sprint on the road where you just need to be really big, strong and powerful. It's who can sprint after doing an hour of pretty much spiked threshold, and so it's a completely different sprint, and there can be some long. It's getting your timings right as well is half it on Zwift, definitely.
I think that's a great point about timing. I mean, Kim Little, who's kind of the captain of the All-Stars team, and he's a rider. I think he's actually riding round 2. He's done almost 500 races. He's kind of the master of timing. So he's certainly going to be in the ear of his team, telling them exactly when to launch their sprint. And you actually see in the All-Stars team, watts per kilo, they averaged they were dotted in amongst you boys, but lower watts per kilo. So you guys have got opportunity to improve and become more efficient on Zwift as well, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely, if you practice and practice and practice at something, you're going to get better. In comparison to 500 races, I maybe done 20, 30 races. I always get the timings wrong in the sprint. I always get too excited and go too soon. Then I do another one, think, leave it a little bit later, and everyone's gone and you're chasing behind and you can't quite get there. So there is definitely a side of the game where you've got to master that as well, not just your legs.
Sure. And looking to another big Zwift event, the National Champs. Are both of you boys entering?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to have a go at it.
Yeah, I'm going to have a go, yeah. May as well, see if we get through the rounds.
Yeah. And get through the rounds and go to the live final, I think, in a arena or something. I think they're planning on anyway.
Some sort of gaming arena, maybe.
Yeah, I hope it's not too warm in there. Need
all
the
good
doors
fan,
open, big fan, yeah.
Can you imagine the size of the fan they'll order in? That'd be mega, yeah.
We've got a few fans there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be in some sort of gaming studio. Just 10 riders. Made for this type of stuff. So
There's only 10 in the final.
yeah,
It's hard to get there.
very hard to get there. Yeah, because there's going to be, I don't know, maybe probably 1,000 entries.
Something to look forward to, something to have a go at.
All right, boys, good to chat. Good job last week. Won the team award and obviously won the overall race with Bibby. Good luck for the rest of the series.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, Mark. Yeah, thanks.
Nice one. There you go, guys. So you heard 25 minutes or so of me chatting away with those guys. I think big takeaway for me is, this Zwift racing is serious stuff. It's not just a game.
They sound like a good couple of characters, don't they? Yeah, like you said, understated and pretty modest, but they've obviously got some horsepower behind them. I like the fact that, Bibby's on their team, but they're still kind of keen to try and beat him as well. He may be the star or whatever of the team, but you can hear them, just that underlying tone of like, I'm going to have a crack at Bibby anyway. But, no, as you said, it's what I think is like, they did take it very serious, Madison Genesis, and they were so clued up. They had that voice note going for where to be, where to attack, and because let's be fair, nobody really wants to get beaten. They may turn up to this first KISS Super League, and everyone might be a little bit like, oh yeah, we'll see how it goes. But if you get absolutely destroyed or beaten or, absolutely the sword put into you, you don't want that to happen. So I guarantee, with this team taking it super serious, I guarantee the next one, you're going to see it a much, much more competitive competition, because everyone's going to do their homework. Everyone's going to pre-ride the ride like young Tom Moses did to go and find the correct power up. It's, mate, it's going to be the way that's so clever, isn't it? I mean, that's the way of the future, if you ask me.
I love that.
I guarantee it's just going to go from strength to strength.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is too, it's entertaining racing as well. To watch the racing was good fun. This is legitimate racing. It certainly is, the future of racing, as on a global scale here, and you can watch it anywhere in the world. So I can be in Australia and watch the event live on Zwift, and you can follow certain teams just like we do with our riders in real life as well. So this is legitimate racing, but it's also hugely entertaining as well.
Yeah, and both the boys obviously spoke about how Zwift racing can kind of augment their road training. So as well as being a competition, these boys, they're head over heels to get involved in this stuff, because they appreciate how fun it is, but also how good the training benefit is for their road season as well.
Yeah, but not only that, mate. Like they get a hefty paycheck at the end of it too. You race your bike flat stick for 50 odd minutes, and you come home with a healthy paycheck. It's more money than they'll make in a club race. So it's Zwift has obviously found great sponsors, and they definitely haven't shied away from the prize purse. So it's definitely another huge motivating factor for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And just digging out the results actually, because there's a cool table that shows the watts per kilos for everyone, and you can see, so Bibby, he kind of averaged 5.2 watts per kilo, and then you've got guys in 20th, 15th place who are averaging 5.8 watts per kilo and producing so much more power, but finishing down the leaderboard. So it goes to show the amount of tactics involved. But really impressive was the All-Star team. So the All-Star team, second, third, and 8th. And out of the top 10, those guys all had the lowest watts per kilo. So the guy in second had the lowest watts per kilo in top 10, which is Matthew Drujon. Again, what a smart cookie. Going to show, it's not all about just laying the watts down. There's a lot to this, and obviously we've got a pretty cool question coming up later about drafting that we can give some cool insight to from that Jordan Rapp's given us from Zwift. But yeah, far more than just a time trial essentially.
Yeah, and we talk about in real life racing, and then how this equates to Zwift racing, in particular the KISS series. And one of the biggest breakaway specialists is Connor Dunn, and he's known for going at the early break in every in real life road race, and he's employed the same tactic in the KISS race as well. He was the one trying to launch the early attacks, trying to get away. He tried several times to do that. Obviously found it a bit more difficult, but it does show that people are racing on Zwift as they do in real life with that same mentality.
Yeah, I was just going to point out, the fella with second place there with the lowest watts. It's we used to employ the same tactics in real life as well. You'd always used to try, our last key word before we left the bus was, our 0 watts. That's all we got bred into our brain was 0 watts. Think 0 watts, because you wanted to have the least watts at the end of the bike race, because for an hour, if you sit for an hour at 287 watts, that's 1,000 calories. And, imagine after 4 or 5 hours of racing, imagine the calories you can save. Imagine during a Roubaix, a 6.5 hour race, the calories you can actually save if you hide, if you ride smart, if you're always protected from the wind. That's a lot of calories to have left at the end of a bike race that someone else doesn't have. So it definitely correlates 100% with real life racing.
Absolutely. I think another key takeaway is it does hugely correlate, but it is different. Zwift is not trying to be like a criterium or like a road race. Now, there are huge similarities, as there are across those different disciplines, but ultimately this is a new category of racing. This is e-racing, esports, and they're kind of a unique skill set that lends itself to Zwift racing. Again, we'll come on to that in a little bit more detail in the question, because as I said, we've got a fantastic question that's been posed to us. But obviously it's not just the pro men that have a chance to race in the KISS Super League. There's racing for the women, which is starting in February sometime, I believe at the end of February. I haven't got the exact details, but there is going to be a women's pro Super League, and also the amateurs. And I've actually got a team entered. That starts on Thursday, this Thursday. So that's going to be cool. We've got a team of 8 riders. So yeah, this is something that you can all have a go at. And my only advice for you amateurs is, as I think John and Tom said in the recording, line up early, because there could be a good few hundred, 400 or 500 riders entering this. And if you join with 10 seconds to go, you're going to be 400 wheels back. And as we all know, fast starts, you're going to be dumped at the back in no time. So that's my little tip there for you amateurs. I'm not going to give you too many tips, because obviously I got my little team in there competing anyway. In fact, boys, do you want to guess for my little Rowan King team?
I would, mate, but I can't bend my knees. Yeah, sorry, mate. Maybe give me a month.
Oh, you're injured, yeah. Give me a month.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation there, Matt, but I'm probably not very reliable. I'm always travelling around the world and got kids and stuff to look after, so I'll have to decline the offer, thanks.
No worries. Maybe next year. Cool. Anything else on the Zwift racing, chaps?
I just want to mention the gaming aspect to it and how fun it is. I was talking about entertainment before, and to hear the two guys talking about saving their PowerUps and hoping to get the featherweight one or the drafting one, it really brings that fun element into it, and that's what nothing else has out there in terms of racing. So it's legitimate hard racing with a gaming aspect to it as well.
Yeah, and you heard absolutely, and Wiggins was saying at the launch, his kids come home from school and they jump on Zwift, not Fortnite. All the mates are on Fortnite, but they jump on Zwift because it's that engaging, and they enjoy it that much. So yeah, all right. So a slight change to the next section of the podcast. I think in previous episodes we've kind of created a session from scratch for you guys to have a try. But there's already an abundance of sessions in Zwift already. So rather than reinventing the wheel, we're going to review an existing session in Zwift in this section. So we've gone in and I've picked out a session at random, and it's a session I see quite a lot of riders do. It's scheduled fairly frequently in game, the Gorby. So just a quick overview before we go through the kind of the phases and the objectives of the session. It's a 10-minute ramped effort up to 80% of FTP, and then we go straight in to 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off. And the ons are 110% of FTP, and the 5 minutes off are 55% of FTP. And then it's a little cool down. So essentially a bunch of zone 5 efforts. Riding at VO2. Yeah, what's your take on that session, guys?
Yeah, for me, this is it's a really straightforward session, but it's really effective. And this is a good example of just good hard work on the ergo with good results. So as you mentioned there, Matt, this is a VO2 max style session, and VO2 is normally between 106 and 120% of our threshold power. and the length of intervals is normally between 3 to 8 minutes. This is 5 by 5 minutes with 5 minutes recovery. So this is classic VO2 work. Should just mention that VO2 max refers to the maximal rate of oxygen consumption in the body. And it's the kind of session that, I guess, in my training, we would use that in a build phase. So you've got a good base behind you. You're ready for some more intense work, some high intensity work. And we would generally use this type of training 2 to 8 weeks out from your peak racing period. And another thing to add to it would be we try and do it with high cadence. So because it is an aerobic effort, we try and complete the VO2 max intervals with a high cadence. So we're looking at 95 plus revs per minute in terms of pedaling cadence.
That's interesting. And what about the sensations, Kev, from the first 5 minute effort to the last? Obviously fatigue's going to build up. Well, how would you expect riders to feel from the first to the last effort?
Yeah, that's a good point to raise. And this is why we also try and ride with the high cadence. So in this example in the Gorby, where it's 5 by 5 minute efforts, you'll probably find that the third one is going to be your best one. The first two sort of work out to be opening type efforts and get the body going and ready for that kind of intensity. The third one is when you're at your most efficient, at your best. And the fourth and fifth one will be the ones where you really dig in deep to get them completed. But the idea with these efforts is to be able to repeat high intensity. And think about when you're racing, when it takes to close those short gaps in racing and those efforts between 1 to 5 minutes. They're kind of VO2 max type efforts there where you're closing a gap or establishing a gap yourself, but also you need to be able to repeat that effort as well. That's why we're doing multiple efforts in this occasion.
There you go. So a great session for Zwift racing.
Definitely, as we know in Zwift racing, it really is about, it's not a steady effort as we think it used to be. It really is a matter of putting the pressure on, recovering and doing it again. So like I said at the start, it looks simple, but it's very effective, very hard training. Wouldn't want to do it more than twice a week. Probably once a week would be enough or once every 10 days. But do it for a period of between 6 to 8 weeks of this sort of training should get you at your best VO2 max power.
Good stuff. And just to reiterate, as you kind of said, Kev, higher VO2 max, saying is a good thing. It means your body can take more oxygen in to deliver to your muscles. So ultimately, then you can produce more power and ultimately cycle faster for that given effort or energy expenditure. So there we go, guys. Give the Gorby a go, and maybe let us know what you think. You can write your thoughts on one of the Zwift forums on Facebook. I think we monitor those and kind of keep an eye and participate in comments. So yeah, feel free to start a bit of a discussion there, maybe. Moving on then. So the next section of the podcast is cycling terminology. So I think Greg, you're up for this term, and Kev, are you okay on the stopwatch?
Ready to go.
All right, Grego. You got 30 seconds. Kev's gonna time you on this. Your term is bunny hop.
Okay, the bunny hop. Righto. So that's effectively the ability to jump your bike in the air without the use of a ramp. Now, this comes in very important. It can become in cycling, especially when, say, you're going through a very sketchy town and there's roundabouts and you've missed a corner. You accidentally have to take a wide line and you have to bunny hop over a gutter. It can come in a bunch crash and you see a rider in front of you. Sometimes you have to bunny hop that rider not to crash. Or races like Roubaix where you don't want to ride on the cobbles. There's a section to the left that's got a bit of grass. You bunny hop off the cobbles and onto the grass and you effectively get it.
That's time, Greg.
Get a smooth ride.
Ooh, good job.
I always thought the rule was you can't use the word when you're describing something. So bunny hop is bunny hopping.
When do we make that rule?
That's just a life rule, I thought.
You're just making up rules now, Kev.
Good stuff.
But a good definition.
Yeah, very, very good definition. And the key there, I've always, you kind of think bunny hopping is kind of a mountain bike thing. But as you explained there, Greg, it's in road racing as well and can get you out of sticky situations. And you say about bunny hopping over another rider, that's not an exaggeration. And I've got an image, I think it's a photo in my mind. I'm not sure what race it's from. It's a pro race. And he literally is a rider literally bunny hopping over another bike rider, and they didn't crash because of that ability to bunny hop.
100%. I've done it a few times. Exactly. There's no way left, there's nowhere right. No, and you're either going to crash anyway, so you might as well have a crack at bunny hopping him. And yeah, I've done it myself. I've gone straight over the top of him, and mate. But the trick is, I'll tell you what, and I probably shouldn't tell the young fellas this, but the trick is make sure you get your front wheel over the guy, because if your back wheel hits him, you don't tend to crash as much. But if your front wheel hits, you're in big trouble. So make sure you get that front wheel over. If your back wheel hits him a little bit, it's not too bad. You'll get away with it and you'll carry on.
Yep. And extra points if you can bunny hop on Zwift attached to a Wahoo kicker. Kudos.
with a 40 kg.
There's a challenge.
With a 40 kg flywheel hung onto the back here, you might snap your frame.
Yeah, absolutely. There we go. All right, moving on. Quick fire question. So I guess let's keep this as a quick fire, and we can. I think it's probably worth expanding after it. But let's just get our one-word response out first. So the question goes, using Apple TV to run Zwift, as many Zwifters do, you're restricted to 3 Bluetooth connections. Power source, have your controllable erg mode, and usually either heart rate or cadence. So the question is, which would you go for, heart rate or cadence?
Heart rate.
Heart rate.
I'm gonna go cadence, just for a bit of a spanner in the works. So 2 to 1. I get from the training benefit. It's good to see kind of correlation, I guess, between heart rate and effort. But a lot of efforts, it's quite hard to dial in and kind of feel what that low cadence is like for a lot of riders. I think often you think you're pedaling slow, but to really kind of get that strength benefit and get down to 40, 50, 60 revs a minute, a lot of riders don't realize how slow that is. So that's my kind of reason for adopting choosing cadence.
That's a tough one to answer, and obviously we only have one choice there. But I really do enjoy doing sessions with a target cadence when it's restricted to erg mode and cadence, because it forces you to ride outside your comfort zone, either higher or lower. But the reason why I chose heart rate is because it's just good to get a feel for how responsive your heart rate is to the effort. And over time, you learn that when the heart rate jumps up quite easily and it comes back down quickly, that you're fresh and recovered and on good form. And likewise, when you're working hard and the heart rate doesn't come up as far as it normally would, you know that you're a bit fatigued and overtrained and might need a rest. So for me, the benefit we get in measuring heart rate along with the effort outweighs the benefit we get with training with cadence.
Yeah, I was going to say pretty much the same, but firstly I was just going to make a little amendment to that. And with Apple TV, you actually only get 2 Bluetooth connections, not 3. So you get your power, which is your ergo, your kicker, or you get the choice of heart rate or cadence. You don't. So there's only 2 chances. You don't get 3. If you had 3, you could do cadence and heart rate and power. But I would use power just for the simple fact that it's trackable, it's traceable, and it's accountable for a fitness improvement and a fatigue indicator. So exactly the same as Kev, for the reason you do the same effort at a lower heart rate. It's a good indication that you've actually got fitter and you've adapted to that effort, and maybe it's time to either up the power or increase the length of the effort.
Yep. All right, Gus. All good stuff. Any golden rules for a Zwifter who is doing a session, they're monitoring their heart rate? If there's one or 2 things to look out for with their heart rate that would suggest, to whether they can the session or whether they carry on. Any kind of golden rules that our Zwifters can keep an eye out for?
Well, there's no real golden rules. It's just really getting to know how your heart rate responds to certain power and when you're outside that norm. So as I said before, if you're working hard and the heart rate just doesn't climb to where it normally does, you know that you're in a state of fatigue and it's probably best to cut the session short. And likewise, if after hard effort it's not recovering as quickly as it would after 30 seconds or a minute that you would expect, then it's also a good indication that you're overtrained and need to have a rest. So for me, it's about the way your heart rate responds to the power and how far it is from what's normal for you.
Got you.
And over time, you're going to have a really good feel for the effort. You'll know what's happened in the past, and which way you should be tracking. And that's where a really good coach comes into play too. You can have that discussion with your coach. Your coach can look at your files and go, okay, you've been working really hard, and in actual fact, your form's not dropping. You're actually, in need of a rest. Let's take a day or 2 days nice and easy and come back and hit these efforts again. So it's definitely getting to know your body, and it can be from a various number of things. It might be an indication that you're starting to get sick. It might be your very first sign, can't get your heart rate up. It can be an indication that you are in need of a rest. You are just touching on that fatigue side, and but also I tell you, a lot of the time I used to struggle with heart rate, and it sounds really bizarre, but during the Tour de France, you suffer so long and so much on the mountains. I mean, by the time you get to the third week, you start. The third week's always very, very mountainous, and I know it sounds strange, and you don't want to admit it, but in actual fact, your body gets tired of suffering. Like, I just get so tired and so unmotivated to suffer that you may start this 15k climb, and then you're like, you're trying as hard as you can, and your heart rate's 15-20 beats lower, your power's 15-20 watts lower. Yeah. But you just are so sick and tired. Your body is just so sick and tired of suffering that you just, it's a motivation thing. So maybe again, taking that back to the ergo, maybe there's a chance that, okay, maybe it's time to get out on the road for a little bit, or change the sessions up, because definitely motivation can affect your heart rate values.
It's kind of, skip the session, cut the session short. So to summarize that, if you can't get it up, knock it on the head.
I think if
if you can't get the session, if you can't get your heart rate up,
God,
knock the session on the head. Oh, brilliant.
Okay.
Oh. Oh man. Right, there was our not so quick fire question. Moving on, we've got a couple of questions, 3 questions. First question is from Chris Ratcliffe from the Zwift Riders Facebook group, and Chris's question is posed as: I've been on Zwift for about a month with a Wahoo kicker. It works so good, and I'm loving the training. I want to get a power meter for when I go outdoors and the season starts. I have a Cervelo and I run a Garmin Edge 1000. What power meter would you recommend?
The thing is, nowadays, they're so reliable now, the power meters. So my advice would be a power meter that is reliable from day to day, meaning if it reads 400 watts on this day, it reads 400 watts again the next day at the same power, at the same RPM and the same gear ratio. So it's about consistency now. Okay, maybe it's 15 watts higher or 15 watts lower than another power meter that the guy beside you is using. But as long as yours is accurate from day to day, you can track your training, you can increase your performance, and that's the key to power meters these days. And I think you'll find, nowadays, Kev, the power meters are they've advanced so much since those first string SRMs are out. The power meters nowadays are really good.
Yeah, you're right. Definitely go for something that's going to be reliable in its reading. And as you said, most power meters are now within 1 or 2% accuracy. That's the deviation they allow. And there is a big push towards pedal-based power meters now. They are quite reliable. You can move them from bike to bike as well. So that's a big conversation in itself in terms of which is the best power meter. I guess really look at your use of it and the needs. Do you have more than one bike? Do you want to have it built into the cranks or the wheel? But as Greg said, just look for something that's going to be reliable day to day.
Yeah, good point. I'm just thinking, pedal setup is a great point about that. If you're willing to change pedals and cleats, it does open up more options. And the Power Tap P1 pedals that we use on the camp in Girona, they're pretty cool. But I guess SRM, is that still the holy grail? A bit expensive, but if you want the best, would you say SRM are there?
As a crank, yes, definitely. They're definitely still, I think, as you say, holy grail, or everyone sort of inspires to be as accurate. And I think they've got 16 strain gauges in their top of the line cranks now, so definitely a very accurate machine, but in the cranks only. The head units, obviously, there's much better head units out there nowadays, and so many different companies making fantastic head units. But yeah, I mean, like we've talked, as long as it's accurate from day to day, and within that 1-2%, you really can't go wrong.
There you go, Chris. Hope that helps. Question 2. And question 2 is from Paul Brown. That was we had this via Facebook, and the question reads: I've followed various Zwift training plans for the last 6 months or so, and I've seen some real progress. An FTP increase of 36 watts from 156 to 192. As I'm now progressing to more demanding sessions, I'm finding myself more and more fatigued. My question is about doing a session of 3 blocks whilst fatigued. If I'm struggling to hit the required powers for block 2 and have failed in the final few minutes, what should I do for block 3? And Paul's kind of given us 3 options. Do I A, reduce the intensity but maintain the volume or duration? Do I B, maintain the intensity but cut the length of the effort short? Or do I C, cut the block completely and take an early bath? And I think I'll let you open up on this, guy. There's a bit of correlation here to the previous, what we're talking about, heart rate.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, isn't it? We just sort of kind of touched on it, but he's bang on the money here. Like, let's be honest, all 3 are very clever options, and this is where a good coach will come into play. It's he'll know exactly what sort of state of fatigue he wants you in. So, say for example, I am training someone, and I know this is a hard block, and we are supposed to accumulate a lot of fatigue in this block because coming up we've got some lighter, easier, faster efforts. Then sure, I would just lower the intensity but maintain the volume. But then if you actually need to get the power done, they're explosive effort, you need it to be done, then I would say, okay, just take the day off, stop straight away, and we'll hit that session tomorrow a little bit fresher. So it really comes down to what part of your training program you're at and what your coach has got lined up for you. But if I had to pick one, and I think, obviously he wants to know a dead set answer. I myself, if I was racing it and doing it myself, I would take the day off. I would say, right, I can't do these numbers today. And I'd have a rest day, and I'd go and smack them again tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm of the belief that you should very rarely be failing a session. So rare that 2 or 3 times in a 6-month block of training should you be failing a session. And as Greg said there, that's where a good coach should be setting hard but achievable workouts and power data. Hard but achievable.
Hard but achievable, mate. Hard but achievable.
Word there. But like Greg, if you're not hitting the numbers, I would can the session, take an early bath for sure.
Yeah, because of course, it's as well as the physical toll on you, it's the mental side. If you're constantly failing sessions and having to make these tough decisions, that's a mental drain. You can kind of a bit of self-doubt will creep in, and it's just not enjoyable. So yeah, good stuff. Cool, there you go. Hope that helps, Paul. The next question is from James Fox that was sent via Facebook again. And this question goes into quite a bit of detail. And we've kind of gone to Jordan Rapp, who is a game designer for Zwift, and has also been a professional triathlete for over 10 years. And is actually going to be involved on the Zwift PowerUps Triathlon podcast. So real credible guy. And he's helped answer the question, which is on drafting in game. So rather than kind of get too creative with this, I think we may as well just kind of take Jordan's response verbatim almost. So there's kind of 3 distinct parts to this question. This really ties into the topic of Zwift racing and how to get a bit of benefit in game. So the first part of the question is, if my avatar is in the upright drafting position in a pack, are there varying levels of drafting? So as an example, if I'm in the middle of the pack versus the outside of the pack, is there less resistance? And the answer is yes. Drafting is impacted by your position in the pack, just as it is in a real peloton in the real world. The more riders in front of you, the stronger the draft. So yeah, kind of if you're towards the back of a pack with 100 riders in front of you, there's going to be a bit more of a draft versus you being second or third wheel. So that's the first part of the question. Question 2, is it true to say that as soon as my watts per kilo go above the watts per kilo of another rider that I'm drafting, I'll start to come round them and accelerate? And that's all else, weight, height, etc. being equal. And vice versa, if I'm leading and my watts per kilo drop below my drafters, will that person then come round me? And the answer is no. Pure power and terrain both play a role. So a 90 kilo rider on the flat at 3 watts per kilo might stay in front of a 50 kilo rider at 4 watts per kilo. And likewise, aerodynamics also play a factor. So a guy with a much better equipment who weighs the same as another rider might stay in front with even less power. So again, just like the real world, absolute power, and aerodynamics are all hugely influential. But yeah, just to recap on that, a 90 kilo rider on the flat at 3 watts per kilo might stay in front of a 50 kilo rider at 4 watts per kilo. So quite interesting there. And the third part of the question, any estimations on 5, 4, 3, 2 and 1 meter distances and the amount of percentage of draft you received? And without giving the game away, the response from Jordan is basically the most that can be shared really is with double draft enabled, it's very similar to the real world. And of course, there's no steering involved, but without double draft, it's a bit less than the real world. So I think in summary, the best way to kind of describe this is just ride how you would in real life. So the best way to ride in Zwift is the same as in real life. So being behind a bigger rider will benefit you more, give you more shelter. Your position in the group, your equipment, your weight, your pure power, not just watts per kilo. They're all factors which impact the resistive forces, aerodynamics and rolling resistance. And yes, rolling resistance is factored. That is a factor in game. But there are some special Zwift features which you'll need to pick up on your own. You need to feel some of it. You need a smart turbo, and you'll need to be really astute. And also visually, you'll need to see some of these differences. Noticing the behaviour of the avatar, and this is where the real experience and Zwift specific skill comes in. It's a unique skill. It's different to any other form of racing. Just like the track differs to road and mountain bike and cyclocross, they're different skill sets and a different set of attributes, a nuanced set of attributes that suit each discipline. So this is, Zwift racing, as we've kind of said throughout the podcast, is far, far more than just a watt-off. Skills, tactics, experience all count, which is why we saw the more experienced Zwifters at the top of the leaderboard last week for the KISS Super League. So yeah, quite a lengthy response there to that question, but hope that helps. I don't think we've got anything more to add there, guys. I think we got it from the horse's mouth there.
Yeah, that's fantastic, isn't it? And I mean, that just shows the time and effort that Zwift have gone to make this just absolutely as close as they can to real world cycling. And yeah, I mean, just even to the rolling resistance and the sitting behind a bigger guy gives you more shelter. I mean, that was something I always did in the real world. I always pick out the big guy on the peloton and I'd always sit behind him because you'd get such a massive difference in draft. Oh, what an incredible job. It's fantastic to hear that response.
Good stuff. And before we wrap up, guys, got some big news. Big Zwift news to announce, personal Zwift news. I'm 800 metres off my Tron bike.
Oh, mate. What a weapon.
Taking long time coming, boys, but I'm going to jump on at the Alp probably later, actually, and get that Tron bike. So pretty excited about that.
That's a massive achievement, actually. Right. Full congratulations on that one. That's good.
Yeah, thank you. And again, a real appreciation, I guess, for everyone who has got that Tron bike, because it's a hell of a lot of work. The amount of every time I go on Zwift, I'm always looking for a hilly route. So yeah, for anyone out there who's got a Tron bike, pat on the back. Well done. You deserved it.
Good work, mate.
Good work.
There we go. All right, guys. Well, that's Zwift Power Up podcast. Remember the new branding, episode 22 on KISS Racing. Gents, as always, good to chat, and I'll see you on the next podcast.
Yeah, mate. Great. It's been fun. And Kev, Matt, look forward to chatting again.
Yeah, good on you. Thanks, Matt, and thanks, Greg.